Support for this podcast and the following message come from Allianz Travel Insurance. Landed in Kyoto, but your bag went to Paris? Allianz could help with benefits for lost or delayed baggage. Learn more at allianztravelinsurance.com.
Just a heads up, y'all. This episode is going to contain some salty language, which means it's finna be some cussing. What's good? You're listening to Code Switch. I'm Gene Demby. By the time you hear this, the winner of Super Bowl 59 will be decided, but since we're recording this before the game, I can't really know if my Eagles have won. But let me back up a little bit. Let me just do some story time with you. So when I first met my now wife, one of the things we found out we had in common was football. Like when we first started kicking it, she would come over to my crib on these fall Sundays with her big ass 49er scarf, and she would drape it over the back of my couch. It was really long, it like fit the whole length of the couch. And I would put on my Eagles fitted hat, you know what I mean? And we'd settle in, put on NFL Red Zone. That's this channel where you can basically watch all the action across the league that day, but with no commercials. You're just guzzling straight from the hydrant of football. And my now wife used to get so mad when the Niners lost. She would just have a stank attitude for the rest of the afternoon. And I just completely understood that. Like, I empathize because I was the same way. So I realized, like, yo, she was my people. When her people first came to the States in the 1980s, they settled in a little suburb of San Francisco. And football was a big part of how they became, you know what I mean, American. Her fathers, her uncles, they watched the games and they learned the absolutely Byzantine rules of this sport, just so they had a way to make small talk with strangers, right? To make it easier to connect with people. It also helped that this was in the days of Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, who seemingly like came from the future to change the sport. Her family just stumbled into a legendary football dynasty, man. I'm not hating, you know? I mean, maybe I'm hating a little bit, but she just wasn't steeped in anguish like a lot of people were. Anyway, so you might be wondering, gee, why y'all talking about this on Code Switch, baby? Okay, well, let me explain. The Super Bowl is the biggest event on TV. It is the most watched broadcast in America. Even some college football games regularly top the ratings. And of course, most of the players who play the sport on the college level and on the pro level are black and brown. And amidst all that is more and more information that we're learning about the huge costs of playing football for the people who play it, like a host of debilitating brain diseases that won't show up until long after most players have hung up their cleats for good.
Can I say that I am a fan of a sport that is inherently violent, that's disproportionately black, that has a ton of issues that deal with labor, that deal with injury, that deal with race, that deal with gender? Can I say that? Like, no, I can't say that.
That voice you're hearing belongs to Tracie Canada. Tracie is a cultural anthropologist at Duke University, and she studies the experiences of black college football players. We talked to her a couple years ago, but we've been thinking a lot about that conversation we had with her lately.
There's some academics that say that the sport should go away completely, that it's just there's too much that's wrapped up in it, and it's too bad of a thing, and it's not doing any good, and so we need to get rid of it. I'm not in that camp. I see the potential in it. I see why people play it. I see why people are interested in it. I just think it can be better for the people that are participating, and that's what I'm motivated by.
The way football is played and who plays it, from the peewees to the pros, it tells us so much about race and labor and power in the United States. And so for today, in the next 2 Mondays, we're going to break all this down. Because if you're a football fan like me and my lady and much of the nation, as we talked about, we are implicated in so much of this.
Especially if we're looking at college, we're talking about labor exploitation, right? The fact that coaches, the fact that conferences, the fact that the NCAA, the fact that these universities make money off of what is happening on a field. So there is a complete disconnect between who makes the money and who makes the money, like who actually like has money in their pocket, and who makes the money for the people that have the money in their pocket, right? And so that's one thing. And then once we get to who is actually on the field doing all of this, we see that it is disproportionately black men that are doing it, right? So let's just use even numbers and say that there's 100 players on a field, 100 players on a team. It'll probably be about half of them are black, right? And so that is a complete disconnect between the population of Black folks in this country, between the population of Black students on a campus, but they are completely overrepresented on this field. And so even if all of the players are impacted by the injuries, even though not at the same rate because different positions are impacted differently, even if all of the players have the potential to be injured, it's still disproportionately affecting Black men. And I think that is like those two things together are what people are often targeting as like why this shouldn't exist in the first place.
And that imbalance does not start in college. It starts when kids are really little, when they first put on their pads in the peewee days. So one thing you need to know, if you're not a football head, if you're not like a sports fan, is that there are a lot of racial stereotypes that go along with who plays which positions in football. If it's a position that requires speed and strength and athleticism, those are generally considered Black positions, right? Think about wide receivers who catch the ball, running backs, defensive backs. But positions that are considered more strategic, that require a lot of savvy, like quarterbacks, like centers, those are considered white positions. And players are kind of nudged into these positions. I mean, there's a long history of Black quarterbacks, for example, being converted into other roles on the field, roles to which they are better suited. The air quotes are strongly implied there. Here's Tracie Canada again.
This is not the type of sport that you start playing when you're 21, right? You start playing when you're a kid. And so if we have all of these assumptions about Black bodies and what they're capable of doing, how they're capable of laboring, but if we're discounting their potentially intellectual skills, we're going to put them in a particular position over another. That's the argument for how racial stacking begins when kids are young and they start playing, which then inevitably ends up affecting how rosters look as guys get older, right? So if you look at college and you look at the NFL, that's how these fields end up looking the way that they do, is because of racial stacking that happens when they're younger.
When we come back,
if the narrative is you get this scholarship, you get a college education, that is your payment for being here, the educations that they receive are not the same educations that other students on that campus receive because they are not able to benefit from being a student in the same way.
Stay with us.
This message comes from Schwab. At Schwab, how you invest is your choice, not theirs. That's why when it comes to managing your wealth, Schwab gives you more choices. You can invest and trade on your own. Plus, get advice and more comprehensive wealth solutions to help meet your unique needs. With award-winning service, low costs, and transparent advice, you can manage your wealth your way at Schwab. Visit schwab.com to learn more. Support for NPR comes from Hiscox, committed to helping businesses protect their dreams since 1901. A business can start with an idea, a desire, a dream. And when you make that dream a reality, you can count on Hiscox to protect it from the risks you can't see coming. With customized policies for hundreds of professions, Hiscox can protect the business you've worked so hard to build. Quotes and more information are available at hiscox.com. Hiscox, the business insurance experts.
Support for NPR and the following message come from our sponsor, Whole Foods Market, where you can enjoy savings every day. Walk the store and see the savings for yourself. In the seafood department, look for the yellow low price sign on Whole Foods responsibly farmed salmon. Great for grilling, buttery, fatty yet lean, nice thick fillets. Or how about no antibiotics ever chicken breasts, organic strawberries, and so much more. There are so many ways to save at Whole Foods Market. Now you know. This message comes from Thuma. Create your oasis with Thuma, a modern design company that specializes in furniture and home goods. By stripping away everything but the essential, Thuma makes elevated beds with premium materials and intentional details. With clean lines, subtle curves, and minimalist style, the Thuma bed collection is available in 4 signature finishes to match any design aesthetic. To get $100 towards your first bed purchase, go to thuma.co/NPR. This message comes from CarMax. Buying a car is a big decision, a decision you should feel absolutely confident about. And when you shop with CarMax, you will. Because CarMax offers a 10-day money-back guarantee, so you can feel confident that you made the right choice for you. If you're not completely satisfied with your decision, simply bring it back within 10 days for a full refund. Always shop with confidence at CarMax, the way car buying should be. See CarMax.com for details.
Gene, just Gene, code switch. So college football teams are disproportionately black. But even before they get to college, black players are often tracked into the most physically taxing position based on what coaches assume about what their bodies can do. We've been hearing from Tracie Canada, who studies the experiences of black college football players, about all of this. But before we get back to Tracie, I want to introduce you to someone you'll be hearing from more next week. Dominique Foxworth played pro ball for 7 years, but he was telling me about his roommate in college who never even made it to the NFL.
He's going to have his hip replaced also, and his knee probably replaced also. And he had his finger shattered. He had all this stuff, and he didn't even play in the NFL. Now, think about the guys who played 4 years in college, accumulated all those bumps and bruises, then played 3 years in the NFL. And the NFL has minimum salaries based on your years of service. So you played 3 years in the NFL. Why that matters is because once you play that, then your salary may jump, which then makes it more expensive to keep you, which then runs you out of the league before you can get vested. And then you are left with all this stuff. And then, all right, you haven't even made enough money to, like, I got the second contract. I went down to Atlanta. I played well enough to get a big contract in Baltimore. I was fortunate. That worked out for me. But there's so many other people who then get run out of league without access to a pension, without the 5 years of health care, and also, frankly, well behind where they should be.
And Dominic said it's not just the injuries that set people back. I mean, playing football in college means you're not really ready for life beyond football.
You had your major determined by how it fits your football schedule. When I got to Maryland, I wanted a computer science major. And the advisor was like, sure, you can do that. But there are labs during practice in a major like this. So sometimes you're going to have to miss practice for that. And like, it was clear to me what she was saying. It's like, you don't, if you want to be serious about football, you can't do this. And I would probably have gotten my scholarship taken. So I took a different major. And then during breaks, we were working out during winter break. During summer, we were up there working out while other kids were getting internships or other kids were developing professional relationships. We were working out. And so, like, how far behind we actually are the regular workforce, and then all of a sudden you no longer have a football career and they drop you in the world with your only relevant experience is hitting motherfuckers. Like that's not all that helpful. And then on top of it, if you're a black person, a black man, you're like, all right, well, I have football experience.
What Dominique and Tracie are referring to are things that are deeply ingrained in the game and culture of football. But Tracie says there are things that could help.
I would say that the rate at which injuries are addressed needs to be sped up, because often in college, guys are encouraged to wait on surgeries so that they can keep playing. So something that I see on college campuses all the time is after bowl season or after the season ends, that's when you see a lot of guys on crutches, a lot of guys in slings, because they've had their surgeries now, because they made it through the season, right? But they got injured in October. So I think that that's a problem, because those are things that will impact really them dangerous. Down the line, right?
Absolutely.
Even if in the moment it is probably okay for you to not address this immediately, like when you're 30, that will come back up, almost guaranteed. So that's one thing.
Yep.
Second thing in college that I think needs to be done everywhere is to encourage players to explore things outside of their athletic identities, because so much time and attention is placed on them as football players that statistically it is impossible for all of them to go to the league. Even statistically, it's impossible for them to play professional, right? Like even if they go to Canada or something. Most of them are not going to play past graduation. And I don't think that most of them are equipped to deal with what's going to happen when they stop playing. And so there needs to be some type of programming in place at every institution, and like actual serious programming of connecting players with alums at their universities, of connecting them to guys that used to play who are in different jobs now that's not football related, or like not playing football related. Those connections need to be made for guys that are in college, because I don't think that they are adequately prepared to graduate. right? And if the conversation is that we give you this scholarship, which is, I don't agree with this, right? But if the narrative is you get this scholarship, you get a college education, that is your payment for being here, the educations that they receive are not the same educations that other students on that campus receive, because they are not able to benefit from being a student in the same way, right? So I think that needs to be addressed at the college level. And those are just two things that come to mind. For the NFL, the thing that comes to mind, and I don't know as much about the ins and outs of this because I don't look at these structures specifically, but it came out from the Damar Hamlin injury, is the way that these contracts work, right? And the ways that if you're on the injury reserve list, if you do get injured and you can no longer play, like there has to be something that's going on with these contracts when the guys end up in the league, whether or not they're drafted, free agent, whatever it is, that protects them from the inevitable injuries that will happen so that they can still get paid, right? Because even if the argument between college and NFL is that you are now being paid, not all of them have these giant salaries, right? Like not everyone is getting paid the way that Russell Wilson is being paid. And
NFL contracts are generally not guaranteed.
They're
right?
generally not guaranteed. And the average NFL career, I think, is at 3 years right now. So most of them are not even staying that long to be able to benefit from the potential of these giant contracts and salaries that's dangled in front of them, right? And so something needs to be fixed. Again, I don't know all of the ins and outs in this, but something needs to happen so that these guys are taken care of no matter what, because they have been through all of this to get to that point. And then you're going to say that 2 years in, I'm going to get injured and I actually don't get this big pot of money that has been the incentive for me to be here. Like it's this perpetual system. It starts way before college. But if I'm somebody that's invested in college, there are all these issues at the college level. There's all these issues at the NFL level. And then even once you're retired, that all point back to anti-Blackness within the system, which is going to directly impact Black players that are participating, which again is disproportionately the labor force for this entire sport at every level.
We asked the NFL to respond to allegations about anti-Blackness in the system, but we didn't hear back by the time we had to record this episode. All right, y'all. Next Monday, more from our conversation with Dominique Foxworth. After Dominique left his pro career, he became the head of the NFL Players Union, and he fought with the NFL over what it owed his former players who pay the physical price for this game that America loves so much.
I mean, it was incredibly difficult because what was uncovered at that time was not just the connection between CTE and like dementia and Alzheimer's, and there was also the idea that they knew way before we did and had actively hid it. So clearly in many cases show that they don't respect us as anything more than pieces to a machine that can be subbed in and subbed out.
You can follow us on Instagram at NPR Code Switch, all one word. If email, if that's more your bag, ours is codeswitch@npr.org. And subscribe to the podcast on the NPR app or wherever it is you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to the Code Switch newsletter by going to npr.org/Code Switch newsletter. And just a reminder that signing up for Code Switch Plus is a great way to support our show and to support public media. And you get to listen to every episode sponsor-free. This episode you're listening to was produced by Xavier Lopez. It was edited by Dalia Mortada, Courtney Stein, and Jasmine Romero. Our engineer was James Willits. I would be remiss if I did not shout out the rest of the Code Switch Massive. That's Christina Kala, Jess Kung, Leah Danella, Marilyn Williams, and B.A. Parker. As for me, I'm Gene Demby. Be easy, y'all.
This message comes from Bombas. Their slippers are designed with cushioning, so every step feels marshmallowy soft. Plus, for every item purchased, Bombas donates to someone in need. Go to bombas.com/NPR and use code NPR for 20% off your first order. This message comes from Warby Parker. What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost, like free adjustments for life. Find your pair at warbyparker.com or visit one of their hundreds of stores around the country.
This message comes from eBay. Swapping out your tires? Cool! With eBay, you find the feel you're looking for, from smooth highway rides to grip for rough terrain. Get all the tires you need at prices you'll love. eBay. Things people love.